ride. Here we go again. Buckle up. Rough road jab. Trying to look here to see what we got. I can use that one there. So that's just there to set the mood, I guess, as to what the subject matter is. If we, I do kind of move around subject matter. So again, the idea is that there's an identification sweep that goes on in immigration operations. Anytime a police officer goes on a call and there's something there, like a cop just could call, I'm looking for this person. Oh, that happened. Okay, they're not necessarily going to identify people. So when ICE goes in, and there's several scenarios, so don't get ahead of me. ICE goes in, or any other officer goes in as part of these deportation task force, and there's undocumented immigrants present. They have to identify everybody, and they should be identifying the white guy. Now, the white guy may have been investigated. Like there was this one, and again, there's all these interactions. Somebody's going to be missed, and it might be the white guy. They might forget to identify somebody, but most likely they check to see if that person was one of the white, or sometimes it's black people. They'll use people that look like U.S. citizens and are U.S. citizens as the face person in some sort of smuggling operation, human trafficking operation. So they probably They probably already knew who that was, because the white guy said they didn't identify him. Well, he probably was investigated to see if he was, maybe part of a human trafficking ring, as far as the person that drives, or whatever it is, even has a house and he takes a couple people in at a time, right, and harbors the undocumented immigrant. Right. So that's one scenario. But law enforcement is going to, once the criminal activity, and it is criminal activity, is located, law enforcement will identify everybody in the immediate vicinity. Generally, I mean, sometimes they'll tell certain people just keep going because they only want to identify 4 people. But if people are around, it's always the best to identify everyone, just in case something spins off of it. Right. And even in that particular case, if it ever went before a judge, you can pull witnesses in or whatever. Now, it's funny because I said this the other day, that profiling is profiling, but when it's not profiling, it's not profiling. So again, here's a scenario. I have a photo, and I'm looking for just say, let's say Juan Cardenas. I'm looking for Juan Cardenas. And I have a photo. If I hold that photo up to a white guy or a black guy, and Juan's kind of medium tone Latino, I'm not going to ask them for identity. But if I hold it up, there's a chance that if I hold it up to a Native American, a Navajo, I might ask that person for identity. There's no other way to identify that person. They're not always going to say, I'm looking for Juan Cardenas, can I see your ID? Just make sure you're not Juan Cardenas. They're not going to say that necessarily. And if the Navajo in the Southwest United right, or Chicago, so wherever the high number of these undocumented people are, the more likely a Navajo or a Native American will get asked for identity. So there's an explanation for all of it. Again, there's a lot of sensitivity around these operations. There's no doubt that they are removing criminals. There's no doubt that some other people that aren't criminals will get caught up in this thing. The fact is, the deportations will keep going, but it's an intelligent deportation generally. So if your Starbucks barista that's an undocumented migrant isn't in the wrong place at the wrong time, then they might just, nothing will happen to them. But I'm not guaranteeing that. Well, because you could get in a car accident and the cop could turn you over. So as far as these things go, I think DACA is still good. It's just, well, it's like the thing I said, and it's going to happen with the trans people in the military. If you try to get rid of them, they're going to say, these are people with jobs, careers. It was okay the first time because we thought that was going to be the policy going forward, but it appears it's on again, off again. It doesn't matter if it's Democrat or Republican. The judge will look at the executive branch as a continuous entity. So I don't think you're going to be able to put trans people out of the military because it's the same thing as DACA, right? It's kind of like this idea that you gave representation to these people, and they started their careers, started their lives. So it's going to be a little more difficult this time, and I probably won't go because it really does become women whimsy, even though it's two separate presidents, but because it's women whimsy within the executive branch. Now, again, you could make a case for it, but it's just like the DACA. Once it goes past a certain point, it's hard to get rid of. Thank you, Larry. So I'm receiving a lot of pushback. You need to look to see if it's law enforcement or these PIs because they need to be taken out. Just get rid of them. So if they're stalking me, that's what they're doing. And they'll represent themselves as Democrats now and say that it's political. It's not. It's a contract hit. They're murderers. They disable people. They're sick and need to be treated as such. There's no need for me to shut up about anything, to tell you the truth. There's no reason any of you have any way to do anything about what I say. You all should be put in prison, should have been put in prison 20 years ago. And if you weren't there 20 years ago, your criminal conspiracy member was. So it's one long criminal conspiracy. Statute of limitations have not begun to run. So if you were in it 20 years ago, you get these people out of there. So there's a lot going on, a lot of sensitivities around these things, and people are, angry and whatever else it is based upon whatever it is. But there's a legitimate reason for a lot of things. But again, it's law enforcement. It's not perfect. You go in, there's a ton of people around. You do the best you can. So again, they might miss an identification of a person or two people. If you fit the description, they might ask you for identity, for identification. And if you happen to be a Native American and they're looking for a Latino, it's more likely that you would be asked than a white person or a black person. Although there are some dark skin and light skin Latinos. So again, everything that the Navajo brought up is explainable. There's probably no way around it. They can't say, "Are you Navajo?" Okay, I can't ask you for identity. You're Navajo because we don't know they're Navajo until we receive their stuff. And then still, there could be a question. I don't know if somebody was given a tribal card. I don't know if there's 10 tribal cards that law enforcement found that were in possession of, somebody was in possession of. So again, they have to verify. That's why fingerprinting is very important. Again, they don't have to provide their fingerprint, if I'm not mistaken. I guess at a certain point, they do, right? If you believe that, if you honestly believe that that's the person, right? But yeah, it's just a quick way to get rid of all of that. I mean, they're already in the database. They touch the finger, and if they're in the database, you can identify them. If you have the fingerprint of the person you're looking for, which you most likely do in a lot of cases, uh, you can rule them out real quick. I really, it was kind of, and I guess I get worried that people can't see my stuff. And again, you're going to make your decisions based upon whatever. Right? And again, you also have a political edge that you have to maintain that political edge. So again, that I realize that happens also, and I might not try to maintain a political edge because I'm just going to focus on the mission at hand. So as far as those nations, you can sit down, and they may have actually reversed because they figured they were helping us by transporting them, right? But you can sit down with those nations and say, if you want, and you could actually make this public if they turn it down, just to show people that it's BS. Right? You can say, look, if you want to transport these people without restraints, and what may have happened is, the president of Colombia has law enforcement around him, and he has people that he would contact to say, okay, how, I want you to plan this thing or whatever it is. They may have told him, we can't transport them without restraints because they could hijack the plane. You see, it's very dangerous on the plane. Well, it could be a mother of 5 that has never done anything in her life to harm anybody. Again, this is officer survival, officer safety that I was speaking about. Again, it's colorless to a lot of you because you don't know what I'm speaking about. When you're in officer survival, officer safety class, they will show you situations where this church-going mother of 5 makes cookies for the homeless people. She bakes cookies for the homeless people. Where she gets into a scenario and kills a police officer because she just freaks out. I mean, you could be dehydrated and freak out. Just because you're dehydrated, there's people in prison for life for murder because they were dehydrated. I guarantee you. I've studied this a million times. Look at weather. Learn to look at weather when something uncharacteristically happens. A lot of times you'll see dry, arid weather. Dehydration. Thank you, my friend. So again, you might want to ask them, could we would allow you to transport them. You come to the United States, we'll have an airfield, the southernmost airfield we can find, and we'll have an area where you can transport them. But they're going to arrive in cuffs and shackles and all that. And then we'll remove those, somewhere around or in the airplane. And then you could fly them with, stewardesses and flight attendants, I guess they call them, right? All you like. Give them, a meal, whatever it is you want to give them. Bathroom breaks. But what may have happened is their security people said we can't transport them that way. Well, in officer survival, officer safety classes, the officer is shown how what normally happens in the world is not what necessarily happens in the law enforcement world. That the nicest people in the world have a breakdown and sometimes kill law enforcement officers. So the officer knows not to say, hey, this is, again, it's happened to INS people. Well, what is it now? ICE people. Right. It's happened to Border Patrol people. They look at all these, 4 of these 4 guys. They look like, average Joes, and next thing you know, that he's got a thump on the head, and and they're on the radio calling for assistance. Right. You read it all the time. So again, when military people come in, they don't necessarily have that, especially a younger military person or a newer military person. They might not have that edge. So we give them classes that freak them out, and then they gain that edge. because they're a little bit nervous. Now we don't want them to be overly nervous, but yeah, we just wanted them to be astute and alert and understand that anything can happen. Well, people are desperate. They came all this way to just for you to arrest them. Again, they want to kill you in some cases, if not all cases. I mean, they don't necessarily kill you, but they want you dead. So again, this idea before I'm trying to head it off at the pass. Marshal Service, FBI, they're all participating in some of these sweeps. That's normal. We were called up by DEA. Is one group that always calls marshals or would routinely call marshals when they needed them, because they just have so many. They do a sweep and they have 10 warrants, and they can only themselves do 5 or 6. Right. So what happens is generally they'll try to split the DEA people up with the marshals and the city cops and all that, city detectives and that kind of thing. And then they tell us this is who we're looking for, and then we go to the house or whatever it is, workplace, whatever it is. So again, that's what's happening in some of in Chicago. It's actually normal. I mean, this might go longer. Marshal Service has what do they call them? The fists. They used to call the fist operations, where they just and they still do it. You'll see them. We arrested this many people. It'll say the Marshal Service Task Force or something like that, but it'll include all sorts of people. A lot of city detectives and county detectives and things like that. A couple of marked units. So that's kind of what's going on there. It's not out of the ordinary. Now, the length of it might be out of the ordinary because it's a priority. And again, why is it a priority? Because it hasn't been even a thought. So when you let something slip like that, then it could become a priority. Yeah, I actually forgot last night that I stopped taking Advil because they say there's a reverse reaction that it could cause. So I said, maybe I'll stop. And again, I think it did work. I think I got better. But I hurt my thumb yesterday somehow. It happened to me once before, and I just sprayed it with magnesium oil. It went away. This time it wasn't given so easy. So I actually took 2 Advil last night, and I forgot about it. I'm thinking, oh, wait, I can take an anti-inflammatory because I haven't taken one in so long. But I was having stomach trouble and stuff, and I just said, and there was this reverse reaction. So I stopped taking it, but then I was taking it when I had COVID, and then I switched to Tylenol. But I was looking for an anti-inflammatory. I put arnica gel on it and everything, and it wasn't given. I might have waited too long because at first I kind of ignored it. Well, Advil makes me groggy. I'm affected by that stuff pretty heavy. I don't like to feel groggy. I don't drink. I don't use drugs. I like to be sharp and tuned with a little bit of caffeine. So again, I feel sad for the migrants. Homan won't tell you, but he walks in and sees a couple of the cases, and he's sad. Okay, Homan's not a bad guy, but he has a job to do, and he has to protect people, and he has to be realistic about it. He can't be a bishop that yells at the president or I wouldn't say yells at, but come on, Trump, get out of my head. She didn't yell at you. Trump's trying to influence me. She simply petitioned him. It was crass. The best way to explain it is it's crass. It was just not, it's not the right place and right time for it. It's just not proper etiquette. But it was said, and like I said, maybe somebody wants to talk to Trump about it. I said, look, we if he can, I don't know if he can talk to Trump or not, but we deal with this in law enforcement all the time. People, generally are liberal, that bring up these things, and they just don't understand that to protect people, you have to protect people. You can't just, have a political talking point. like I said, they're immigrants that come up here and they're not succeeding. I said if we had an open border, it would just be horrible. I mean, just the amount of crime that would just occur around that border and all sorts of things. People would be kidnapped and put into bondage like they are. So again, the fact is, first off, people are raped and killed on the way up here, and nobody cares because they just want to get up here. Again, it's a humanitarian crisis, but the answer is in their home nations. Their answer, to a certain degree, is El Salvador. I think El Salvador could hone it a little better and make it work a little better. Right? And again, it may just take time. I don't know what their focus is completely, but if you work that problem to the end, then you'll minimize your crime, and then you won't have those big jails and things like that, or need them, those big prisons and all that. Right. And at what point could rehabilitate? Oh, actually, I think they did work that angle. They're starting to do some rehabilitation. So they did. He doesn't. I don't think they advertise it a lot, but I did read a news article that they are like taking a few people off out of the intensive programs and putting them and giving it a try on rehabilitation. But again, you have to ask the question: is at what point do they say, "Okay, I learned my lesson"? And some people never do. That's a fact of life. And it says, and again, I don't want to say that because if you heal them, if you're an honest government and an honest community, and you heal those people, they might heal. You might heal everyone. That's really all it is. Mind possession. Crime is mind possession. Their mind is owned by Satan. You have to get Satan and the demons out. And there may be a cop that's cursing them and allowing and actually putting Satan into them because they just, their minds are going too. Again, I explained about these cops that come after me. They're insane. They never should have been allowed around me. They're psychotic spycraft spy masters. They're sick. I don't care what position they hold. That's who they are. Psychotic spy masters. I mean, pretend it's a contract. They come in there with a contract. So I've heard that they never check them out because there's this whole, or they usually don't check them out because there's this whole system they use for it, and it seems legitimate. And they checked a couple of them out and they found out who they were working for. Look, I've been in the Marshal Service, and I warn other officers of this. I was in the Marshal Service, and we come along, we can just do about anything and ask anybody to do anything. You have to be careful because they worship the idea that you're a deputy U.S. Marshal criminal investigator. And they don't think of what of checking things out or not doing something that they probably shouldn't be doing. We don't have to engage in crime generally to do something. So again, these operations, combined operations, are normal. It's normal to ask for ID if the person looks like they might be the person you're looking for, because that's the part they don't have. Now, if the officers are just asking random Navajo for identity, I can't speak to that because it doesn't seem like that's it. But if they are, that'd be a strange thing. But again, if they're in the Southwest and they're assigned to sweep the bus terminal or whatever it is and make sure that during the daily operation of the bus terminal that these people aren't moving into the United States, then they might ask for identity. Again, they've gone on buses and they ask everybody for identity. So again, these operations began, about 10 years ago, I think, that particular type of operation. And it may have done it before, but it became, it was being done in outside Miami and stuff like that. I think, like the locations increased. They were doing it in Florida, if I remember correctly. So it actually had increased as to where they were looking for identifications of people on buses and things like that. Back in a second here. I'm not going to get offline, but I'm going to shut the sound down for a second. Yeah, I'm going to change my humidity a bit. I turned up the humidity. I had my sinuses were kind of. So again, sometimes it's described as tough love. Some of what law enforcement does, and that's kind of what Homan does. Because if you listen to Homan, he's talking about helping certain immigrants. He can't tell you all of it because he's got to be the tough guy. That's his job. Somebody else can come along and be the nice person, but he's got to be the tough guy. Well, it's a scenario that we can't fix without doing what we're doing. It doesn't. There's no way to manage it. You all allowed it to become unmanageable. Right? Again, Europe's going through the same thing. But again, the knee-jerk reaction in the other direction isn't the answer either. And it's not, even if they wanted to do it, Homan admitted he can't do it. There's limitations. Well, you know, this is when you're in law enforcement. If Homan doesn't go in a certain direction, then he's never going to free the undocumented immigrants from what's going on in their lives. Again, you could look at a barista. And he's got a nice wife and 4 kids. He looks like middle class USA or something, or maybe even a little shy of that. But it's got a pretty good life. That's not everybody. Again, that's the illusion. That's how the cartel makes money, by showing you the barista, and how the cartel enslaves people, and how the cartel gets women to rape and to put into sex trafficking, as well as others. It's not only the cartel. So again, she's right. Again, we ran into people in law enforcement. You run into people like the bishop all the time, and that's, like I said, you help Trump understand that it's not him. These people exist, and we all deal with those people. Again, some of the people that are, some people will attack me, again, but they shouldn't have unlawful way into my life because I do help you. Right? Because they believe that we're not helping. We're trying to hurt immigrants. And again, there are individual immigrants that are darn screwed because ICE comes in and arrests them. Their life is over as the free rides across the United States on the buses, assaulting law enforcement officers while they're trying to arrest somebody. That kind of stuff's over when that happens. Breaking into football player houses, breaking into my apartment. Right? That stuff's over when they get detained and deported. Again, we have a lot of rapes and things that are going on. Again, not all the rapes are investigated to fruition. And if it was just a immigrant passing through, they could get away with it, especially if they returned to Mexico, or if the rape kit didn't reveal anything, or it was mistested. Got that drip going on again. Hopefully, with the warmer weather, it subsides. What it is, my heaters won't be on as much because it's warmer. Right. Today's going to be a warm day. Waiting for FedEx with one of my phones. I was able, I didn't really even work it. I bought the iPhones, and boy, I paid a lot of money. But I'm like, hey, I can't have them hacking into my attempts to put a credit card into the system to order things when I'm not well. I live here alone, and I got to have CVS deliver it, or Walgreens deliver it, whatever it is. But boy, when I returned them, and they refunded almost all of it, and if I have to pay whatever's left, that's fine. But it doesn't make sense because they said they would 100% refund it. I did do a quick delivery. That might be like $40 or something. It wouldn't be. It's like 140. But I mean, these things were expensive, so I actually got a better deal. I ended up buying 2 Androids, and I wasn't like I had given it up, but it just happened. It actually worked. My opinion is, the safest thing is to have 2 phones on 2 separate carriers. That way, if your carrier goes down, you're still linked to the other carrier. But again, the way the system works, they share resources. It may not be perfect, but right. So it kind of just worked out that way. And having a different type of phone, is interesting. I almost bought 2 of the same phone, but I found the deal that I thought existed didn't exist. I could get the phone, but I'd have to enter into like a 3-year contract, and that's kind of crazy. Wasn't the deal that I thought it was. I mean, it was still a great deal, but it would take me 3 years to realize the deal. Although they did have another program along with it where they'll pay off your phone or not, and stuff like that, and anytime upgrade. So there's a lot of things going on out there as far as all of that. But I was able to probably purchase 2 Android phones for the price, somewhere around the price of the iPhone. And it's, the one's top of the line, new release, and the other one, a recent release, and probably well enough for what I do. I don't play the games. I think what a lot of people are looking at is, that multitasking in the games and all that. And I think the processor is sufficient. Again, I could upgrade later. What I wanted to do was pay it off real quick. So I was able to get the price down probably by almost $1,000, which was well. Again, I'll reiterate, I'm owed for damages. I'm owed for my work. And if it was a scam to get me to work because they were trying to, say I was doing something wrong, then that's on them. It's not on me. I worked in good faith. Thank you, Larry. Yeah, they come in. Again, it's spycraft to get you. Again, I speak about how they did it to Bob. They got Bob to do work that was dangerous for him. So again, in public relations for this thing, it's really simple. And Homan has started some of it. Saying, look, we're only going to be able to deport who we can deport. If you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that's come up in the Navajo already, where somebody wasn't deported, but they were identified because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. So could a Navajo be harassed for identification? Yes. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully they don't use the guise of immigration things to harass a Navajo or any other Native American. But again, most likely there's a reason for it, such as, they have a photo or a description, and they want to make sure the Navajo is not the person. Like, people don't know that you're Navajo all the time. I used to do, is that person Latino or Navajo? Or Native, I guess I wouldn't say Navajo. In Santa Fe, it's hard to tell the difference sometimes. I mean, obviously, some of the Navajo are very distinct. Like the young lady, it was her birthday. Her friends gave her a half gallon of vodka. She asked me if I wanted some. I said no. To be careful, it's hot. Make sure you drink water. I went back to my apartment, got her a gallon of water. I said, if you're going to carry that around, drink this. So I gave her a half gallon of water. They gave her a half gallon of vodka. She was looking for the Native American lady that that was, she takes care of some of the Navajo people. She's like the Navajo Connect in Santa Fe, and she worked the shelters, and she herself had an alcohol problem, and she had some other things going on. Right. But I used to help them when I could. I tried to work on our daughter's vehicle one time. I couldn't get it fixed, but I got sick. I got like a flu from it or something, a cold, like I was out in the cold so long trying to fix her vehicle. And another time I tried changing the starter. I think I did do that one. Right. But when in the middle of changing the starter, the boss lady from the place, you can't do that here. I said, it's going to take me 10 minutes. She's like, 10 minutes, I'll put you out of here. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm a guy that kept that place safe, man. Right? I helped keep that place safe. Right. It's like, yeah. So I moved it somewhere, and I think it finished the project. Right. Thank you, sir. So people that are in, gainfully employed or in DACA, there's probably not much that's going to go in that direction. The courts have already said that they started their lives and you can't end their lives, but you can end the program. You don't have to take new people. Actually, they ordered that they had to take new people at a certain point, but I don't know if that one's still in effect. So again, that has to be full. You got to get Pam Bondi in there because all these things need to be fully adjudicated, so everybody knows where they stand. I don't think you can be forced to take new participants in DACA, but I think you have to give the people that have been in it, something. You have to stay. They have to stay here. That's what the court said. You have to think about, giving them at least a status to stay here, and I think that's what Trump was speaking about. Not necessarily citizenship, but not necessarily, deportation. Although he may give them rights, I don't know. Now, on the side, if you're somebody that came here as a child and you have information, you could get citizenship, a green card, or at least a green card, from DHS. But you'd have to provide some information. Generally, a way to do it, especially if you were a young person and you're maybe a younger person. A lot of the people that are in DACA now are, they're like 40 years old or something. And that's the court's point of view. You told this person when they were 25 that they could stay, and now they're 35 or 40, and you want to deport them. Right. Well, and then there's also resources where we can help people. They're undocumented immigrants. We can help them get counseling and things like that, even if it's private sector. So when we decrease the numbers, that happens better. There can be more focus on the individual immigrant. And again, I believe there should be assimilation classes. This is not to say that they leave their culture behind, but it's to say they adopt enough of the U.S. culture. Again, we're not asking them to become Italian. We're not asking them to become Irish. This is something we all take part in, the U.S. culture, enough so that they can succeed and won't be beholden to a boss. English as second language classes for immigrants is very important, especially if they're DACA. We need to help bring them along if they have to stay here. They can't sit there and not learn English, or in some cases that happens. They don't know English well enough to really live outside of their culture. And what happens is it's a bondage device mechanism. If you don't assimilate and you have to live, again, I explained how there's a lot of organized crime and racketeering going on in immigrant communities, and it oppresses them. The boss is this, and the boss says this, and the boss says that. Right? Boss could put you in as his girlfriend or one of his underlings' girlfriends, or even as a prostitute. So again, this is going on in Chicago today. Right? Just to understand why we're there. Now, the boss might pay the Democratic Party candidate, the maximum donation just so the boss gets to do whatever the boss wants. And they even bribe somebody. That's in Chicago today. Not to say that the mayor is part of that scheme. So again, a matter of taking these communities back, assimilating the people that do immigrate here so that they understand how to get out of a situation like that. Again, that's a way to get a green card. If somebody is, they have to protect you, and DHS has to remember, if you have somebody that comes along and starts telling you about organized crime and racketeering and these gang bosses shaking people down in Chicago, you got to pull that person up out of that. Hopefully, you don't have to sting it any further, because it does get dangerous for the person. But you may want to sting it further if you have to. But I think that's one of the things that we don't do well enough, is to get the immigrants in to understand that they can get a green card. Just tell us what's going on, and it's not every case, but most cases, they can get you a green card, and they can pull you out and start you. Like if they live in Chicago, you move them to Ohio or something. Right. And that's another reason to get rid of these people that are part of these criminal organizations, because if they're looking for them in Chicago, and there's an affiliation from Chicago to Ohio, because they transport drugs in that direction. If we hide somebody over there, they might figure out they're over there. Again, their intelligence network increases. I'm sure they've showed my picture around to immigrants. Dirty cops and, like crime bosses. So always remember that, while we go through this, if they have something to tell us. So again, when you interview them, you can always add a statement. Is there anything you want to tell us about criminal activity? Maybe we could help you. You can find out if they're in bondage. They may have been in bondage. That's why they were there. Right. I mean, you have to understand how this works. They could live in an apartment with another woman, and both of them could be in bondage. There's just nowhere for them to go. Or they believe there's no. See, it's an illusion. They believe there's nowhere for them to go. Or they could have been made addicted to drugs, or have been addicted. What happens is they'll addict them to drugs to keep them off center, and they can't figure out what to do. Again, they've drugged me before, and that's what it's for. Thank you. Thank you, Larry. So Chrissy Noem's in there, and she looks like a good cop. But again, we might want to use some of the. We want to what's this? Again, it's not manipulating people for bad purpose, but we need to figure out what the best psychology is. Might want to use one of the Border Patrol women, or one of the ICE women that are Latino, or some other. Like you can use variety. You can use African. We have people work in. That's another point. People in ICE aren't just white people. Obviously, the Border Patrol. I said I wanted to marry a Latino woman. I wish I'd have went into Border Patrol. Like probably a Latino wife. And it would have been a cop. See, they knew what they were doing. They knew where I should have been in life, and who I should have married, and how it all would have worked. And they destroyed it. And they actually baited me with it. Tried to, at least. I should have married a cop woman. It would have worked great. We'd have been unbreakable. We've been able to investigate the entire world. Well, that's part of a good cop, bad cop. Trump was a major bad cop yesterday. I don't know what you did to piss that man off, but we can't control him. He's going crazy. That's generally how it works, and Trump knows he's doing that. Well, like I said, we don't know for sure what happened in Colombia in the end, right? Again, they did equivocate. I would prefer that they come and pick these people up. And the reason being, less friction. First off, less friction. They get what they want. We get what we want, and then it helps us. We get to conserve resources. So again, there should be discussion to see if that could be started because it would be great. I mean, Lula hasn't made a deal yet. Lula is pretty angry. But again, I explained it, and hopefully you all can explain it. That this is just policy. Because of the threat of hijacking the airplane, or causing some issue in opening a door or whatever it is. We can't have them without restraints. And maybe in Colombia they may have told the president, look, we can't transport them without restraints. I mean, you probably they could start a fire in there. Thinking you could put them in a cage, it's bad optics, but you could build a cage and maybe put them in there and not have them restrained. But then they could because it gets crazy on the deportation flights. I mean, some people are fine with it. They've come to grips with it. Other people, they go insane. They can end up trying to kill the other people in the cage with them. I mean, because it's a trying experience for a lot of them. You have to understand that they went through like years to get where they did, and then now they have to go back, and it's a very traumatic experience for them, and anything could happen. She's put spells on me. They've put spells on me today. I'm trying to repel them. They're very sick people. Again, it proves that they have history of spycraft assassination. Things will flash into the mind that they're projecting. Again, Trump has to be careful because they're going to manipulate him another way. We want him to be, have that steady mind so he can make best decisions. Again, the best posture is that in 2 years, the Democrats will have all the offices, but for the president. But then they'll try to take out the president. Again, I'm not anti-Democratic Party, but you have to understand when you become the opposition, then you're opposition. You don't have to make yourselves the opposition. Again, the governor of Illinois said he's okay with taking criminal immigrants out, but he's not into the other part of it. And of course, that work does that overlap. So we do have a world that could work together somewhat. The numbers are too high because we're not really helping the immigrant when these communities are constructed. I mean, obviously, Tren de Arrega is creating a network where they control large swaths of the United States, at least the immigrant population. What do you think they were doing with those weapons going into those apartments? They're there to enforce the criminal rule. Right. And, for all we know, they're getting paid. Somebody in the law enforcement or somebody in the political office is getting paid $1 million to allow it. Again, if they're dealing in narcotics, $1 million is nothing, especially if they're moving large amounts. Or breaking into, a football player's house. No, the whole situation's sad, but you have to understand some of it was preventable. So a lot of the things that are going on because somebody let it happen. Again, at a certain point, I told you have to manage it. You can't just, I didn't agree to what Texas was doing with the buses, but I said, okay, and I wasn't agreeing. I was agreeing to the fact that you need to get them out of Texas. You need to get them out of, because Texas was complaining. So I said, you need to get them out of Texas, because I said, I don't know why Texas is complaining, because so many immigrants work down there. One of the major employers. But But I said, you have to get them out of Texas so they don't bust them. You need to move them forward. But I said, when they get forward, whoever receives them needs to get them employed, because if you don't employ them, it's going to be a mess. Like happened. They're committing all these crimes. That's generally the alternative. But at a certain point, I told them, you just can't keep it. They were swearing they were deporting them, and the numbers look good, but maybe they were false. Right? Apparently, they were false. Well, because again, the whatever it is, Immigration One app is a good idea, but apparently they were abusing it. That's where the trouble comes in. Well, it wasn't like we were taking people just from Mexico that were, just in a bad way, and they wanted to go to, again, the idea that even Governor Abbott said, it could play off of that. Go to the points of entry. Go to the points of entry. Don't try to enter anywhere else. So Governor Abbott even said it. So that one app, theoretically, that's what it would do. But what they were doing was that if you were sitting in Medellin, Colombia, you get on the one app, they'll send a plane to pick you up or something like that. Or I guess maybe they paid for the plane. But again, that's what it wasn't made for. It wasn't made for that. It shouldn't be made for that. They're taking undocumented people from foreign nations and promising them, because they were actually attracting them with that. They became the help of the cartels. So if somebody could get up here, they would meet them at the point of entry. But the idea was, the point of entry thing is, if you're in Mexico and you need to get to, you want to contact somebody in the United States for amnesty, go to the point of entry. It's not the idea that if you're sitting in Colombia, because there's a documented immigrant process. You go to if you're in Colombia, you go to the embassy, the U.S. embassy, and you apply for something. And if it doesn't work, not much can be done. Now you can come up here, and if you're trying to go amnesty, point of entry, that's understood. So they were trying to grant amnesty globally from the one app. I mean, it sounds like a scam. Again, that could even be run legitimately. But again, it sounded like it was being run like a scam. You'd have to go through the records to see how off it was. Well, again, if some woman is being harassed by a criminal organization, her and her family, and she applies for amnesty, maybe it could be granted. But again, if you let all the Trena Reggae in, they're taking her place, you see. Because that's what happened. Or whoever else. MS-13, individuals that just sit around and drink all day. Right. I mean, it's one of the problems is, again, they didn't assimilate. They came up here and lived like they did in their home nation. They get drunk all day, or get drunk every Friday, Saturday, and drive all they like. And usually nothing happens to them. The same thing is in Afghanistan when you rape a child, very minimal enforcement. They come here, they get 20 years. So again, you have to do the assimilation classes. You have to warn them that we actually have laws here. For anybody that does come in, again, I don't know, what the future. Again, DACA, I guess that most of those probably they're working and they have normal lives. So again, the one app isn't a bad idea. It's just there was an abuse of it. Their theory is that they're stopping people from going to the cartels, and again, but what you're doing is you're playing a game with the system. You're gaming the system. Instead of making legal immigration avenues, you're making undocumented immigration avenues, which skews the figures of what we're actually doing as a government. But again, the idea is if you increase the number beyond a certain point, it's unmanageable and it doesn't help anybody, not even the immigrant. Now, you can show me cases of where it helped the immigrant. But that's not everybody. Again, some people are dead, have been killed. There's no accountability. There really isn't. They just assume they went back. Once they get here, the system is once they get here, if they get released, they have to show up in 2 years or 3 years. But nobody's going to go look for them if they don't show up. So if they were killed and the body was disposed of, successfully, there's nothing. They could be sitting in a horror house. Right? We can't find them. We've got so many people here. And who looks for them? You can't do open borders. But then the next thing is, well, would you open borders and legitimize it? And then, no, it doesn't work. So again, Homan has led on that they're not all going to be deported. again, like there's programs out there. If you're a agricultural worker, you can or could. I don't know if you can't do it now. I guess I don't know. Is that still in effect? What do we do with that? Because there's a program. If you're an agricultural worker, you get with your boss, you can get yourself a work visa, even though you're here already. So again, if you're working in migrant worker, the ag world, if you didn't get something, it's kind of on you and your boss. They were given visas. There's other fields too. Not too many, but that's the big one. So it's recognized that United States citizens would not necessarily work as an ag worker, a migrant worker. So they have recognized that with a program. Now Trump stopped everything, right? So I don't know if that's still in effect. And again, that would be something to check with Trump. And again, the only way to really make a decision for that is to check our numbers. Like what are we looking at? Well, yeah, that's another point. I guess somebody brought up, a lot of these people that aren't going into the program have a criminal history or wanted in their home nation and that kind of thing. So they can't come out of that status and get. And it's probably better that they're not there then. Oh my God! Thank you, Larry. I mean, they know they successfully shut down my massage therapy. I have to start it up again. So again, but how did it happen? COVID. So again, I can analyze that metaphysically and know what they're doing. And why did the COVID actually maybe last a few more extra days? Because I wasn't on my vitamin. Actually, it may not have actually even. I mean, I could have been asymptomatic if I was on my vitamin regimen. Right? I mean, right before I got COVID, I found it very difficult to even take my vitamins. It was like one every 3 days or something. Again, they do that with various methods, including breaking into the apartment. Again, they have to be paying off some cop somewhere for that to happen. Or at least promising them something, like a task force position. Could be the Marshal Service, right? How cruddy they are. It's a scam because I go, look, but we arrested all these people and we're really good cops, but they're just psychotic, man. People that do that are psychotic. Well, like I said, within everything, again, the world is the world, and Trump, makes political deals just like the Democrats make political deals. So I'm not too hot and heavy on, somebody not being arrested or being put out or whatever, because maybe there's a benefit to keeping that person because they may have, fed information or something for a few years or something like that. But again, we do need to stop the deep state. Thanks, Larry. Well, they have to make their decisions based upon what they believe is best course and best case. scenario. Right. We agree there. Now, these people are psychotic, man. They ain't got no rhyme or reason. So you have to be careful of that, of the psychotic people feeding you a line of shit. They are contricksters, these deep staters. There's no doubt that you have a bunch of Republicans that are actually deep staters that will manipulate you if they can. I think once you place your military police, you great choice. They have the background for it. They have background investigations. Right? You have to do your in briefing and your familiarization. Right? But great choice. And if they're from the 101st, they're probably air assault. So you know the majority, if not all. So you can use them around the helicopter. Remember that. Remember your 101st unit. Your 10th mount. I guess your 10th mountain's on. These are like the units I'm connected to inside. So 10th Mountain's on reserve or on a standby or for deployment. So any unit that works around helicopters a lot is a huge asset. Right? Because you'll be able to move them by helicopter and they have the familiarization. Safety briefings, always remember that. I agree, sir. You'll hear me receive every so often from somebody, some spirit or something. Sometimes I don't know who it is. I'm an open channel. I can stop it, but for some reason, oh yeah. So God reminds me, I'm projecting inside what I'm saying right now. So some people hear it in their mind or just think it. So because of that, I receive at the same time. That shouldn't happen if the world was clean. If it was healed, that wouldn't happen. If I had a different life, I was up a little higher. If I was paid my money, it'd probably be easier to control them. Again, the world works on statuses, and money's one of them. Eating my chimichanga breakfast. I'm not even people from Central and South America at all. If the cartels hadn't rose up like that, I'd probably be living in Mexico. I would move there. Just when I thought to move there, that's when the cartels. That shows you how my life worked. Cartels increase. I rule out. So at a certain point, interaction with some undocumented immigrants will change. Right? Brings to mind a video on YouTube of a female officer interacting with an undocumented immigrant in a vehicle. She's trying to get him to come out, and eventually pull a weapon. So if you're an officer on the street, you're going to be affected by, these thoughts that the immigrants are going to have that my life's over because this cop has pulled me over, or my life as I know it. So that you're going to have to start briefing your officers, just, treat people fairly, but they have to keep an eye out for that type of thing. Officer safety issues might increase. So that's something that might need to be briefed in all law enforcement entities, that the immigrant community is going to be a little bit more unsettled about being pulled over, and that could lead to an armed confrontation. Just trying to remember back what happened years ago. And again, to let them take advantage of other immigrants, to let them run criminal societies, rape, pillage, and plunder is not the answer. Right. So again, a byproduct of enforcing it is what I just spoke about. But the fact is, if it was enforced from the beginning, we wouldn't be at this point. Problem is, enforcement was not appropriate. Again, it's kind of crazy, and that you let it go 2-3 years until they come in and see. Now, if you had a program where you could effectively monitor them, like a probation program, but again, it's just the numbers were too large. And again, that's the idea. Once you get it down to a certain size, immigration services, all those agencies will be able to monitor much better, and they'll know who's here. And if they violate some sort of part of the agreement, then they're gone. It's unmanageable the way it is. For sure. So again, this is one of the keys to it. Is what we're attempting to do is to create a manageable immigration world where we know who's here, we can check up on who's here. Well, we only have so much we can do with the system as it is. We fix the numbers, and that same system becomes effective. It's like trying to, you got a what's some of the new cars? You got a Pulse or whatever it is. You got this little car, or vehicle, and you try to you tow 500 pounds, it works. You try to tow 10,000 pounds, it doesn't work. And that's pretty much where we are, trying to tow 10,000 pounds with a little car. Reduce the numbers, we reduce that weight on the vehicle, and then the system starts working. Now, in the national security, public safety threat world, there are people that are thought to be part of terrorist organizations. So they're eventually going to be deported when they're located, and they may actually be deported now. They just may not. So it's not only Latinos. That's what I'm getting at. Again, remember to put that other information out also, so that it doesn't look like you're just focusing on Latinos, because I'm sure you're not. Right? But again, the Latino gangs are high priority at this point. Again, their presence in so many different locations shows you what the risk is. I mean, we relocate people all the time. Again, sometimes when ICE or another agency receives that assistance, we relocate these people. If we relocate them into Ohio and there's an organizational connection there, then we have problems. Again, the key is we have to take care of the people that we say we're going to take care of, and we can't allow the mess to overwhelm us. Again, I'm thinking through something. What are the probabilities of something already have happened? Has this happened, because it keeps coming up? Maybe it's a future thing, so be careful. So the funny part is, when I lived in South Florida, I connected into Colombia and into so it's because the people that were around me, I guess. I don't know. It was strange. Right? And actually, one woman wanted to marry me, and she was rather young, and I was a little nervous about it, but she was honest about it. I don't know if she would have stayed, but right. Well, they were in a bad way. I felt bad for them. I was going to at least try to go there and help them. Their mother was actually a prostitute, and an American came down there, and she ended up marrying him. And so she lived in Boca Raton or something. And she just said bye and left them. And they were in their 20s, twin sisters. The one sister that I was talking to had a little kid. And I said to her, I said, why don't you want to marry a young Colombian man? I said, I'm an older guy and all this. And she said, she points to her daughter and says, that's what they gave me. That's why. They don't care. Right. So in Colombia, it's strange because, again, the women's rights are very, very low down. I mean, what they do is it's like a change out. When a woman reaches a certain age, generally, they start going for the younger women. So, if you're not married by a certain point or you have a kid, it's pretty bad because it's just this overage of use and abuse of women. Again, I had been married if one for these people. It's just horrific what they do to people, and I'm not the only one. Again, we call them the deep state, but it has fingers everywhere. Well, like I said, if you're an immigrant, I'm not asking you to inform on. If you provide information about criminal immigrants that we don't have on the list, there's a good chance that that they're going to give you a green card for that, and you help the task force focus. Again, people that have a job will be and living a good life. As far as the only thing they did was unlawful entry, uh, will less likely be disturbed. So if you provide us intelligence about criminals, then we can go get the criminals. And again, if it's American criminals too, I mean, if you have information about, some white guy down the street that's, running a sex trafficking ring or even a smuggling ring or whatever it is, we, you can actually have it for that too. But be honest. You have to be honest. You have to be upfront. You can't hide things. That's my point about DACA. I think they should be required to say something about what happened to them in life and make a statement of facts, not simply be here and haven't been brought across the border. Again, the intelligence is dated at this point. I mean, I'm convinced that they have these lookouts and they work contracting and landscaping and everything else, and they collect intelligence about a lot of us. Again, if we can penetrate some of those networks. Again, they are devils and they have ability to project spells. So the more of them we deport, the less pushback we'll have when we try to do good works for our neighbor and for other people. So I guess Trump's pumping up the numbers by putting all the task forces. So again, the Marshal Service task force is now focusing on some of this, which is normal procedure when we have these type of things. So again, we didn't initially use all the resources that we had, and Trump has asked for an increased number. Again, we need to bring in other people. But it's what I'm trying to get at. This is not only because of this. This is something we do routinely. Other agencies will help the Marshal Service when they have a big fugitive operation. We'll call it the task force, but it includes everybody. City detectives, county detectives, may even include DEA for a few days or something, and somebody else for a few days. Well, if we work on DEA fugitives or something, then they may come in and help us for a few days. So these things are routinely engaged in. It's not something out of the ordinary. Just to dispel this idea of what's actually happening. Again, briefings on the truth of what's going on help also. To brief the public on the fact that this is actually routine, but it's being applied to this burgeoning issue that the nation is concerned about. We do it for fugitive work. We do it for DEA raids. Essentially, if the DEA puts together a case, they could have 30, 40 indicted people. So they call in the Marshal Service, they call in FBI, whoever wants to help, city detectives, county detectives, state officers, and that aren't normally on their task force, and they create a larger task force, and that's what's going on in those communities. It's something that it's a tool that law enforcement uses. Right. When you see like the sex investigations, the sexual offender and the sex trafficking investigations that the marshals engage in, and it'll list all the agencies involved, and you'll see that big grouping of all these different agencies assisting for that particular operation. So it's the same thing. Because what will happen is, what I'm trying to say is, like the immigrant activists will say, "What are they doing now? What are they doing?" There's nothing there. It's a red herring if they bring it up. It's just another tool that law enforcement uses. So I'm going to open up some sunlight here. It's going to be a warm day today at a certain point. So what's happening now is that the nights are getting warmer. So we're not going down below, like, lower 30s, upper 20s. I think it actually is not going down below
Hello, hello, hello. I don't know if you heard me or not. I was kind of. I'll have to look at that. But I was saying is, when I got pulled over, I'll say it again. When I got pulled over for reckless driving after I was drugged, I didn't have any memory. I have memory now. I didn't have memory then. Again,
their goal to destroy my mind and screw up my memory. It was right around the Luna hearings, but I didn't know the Luna hearings were happening. Thank you. Thank you. I was attacked because of the Luna. That's what I figured. That's why because I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't bothering them. Again, but the people that are part of this would probably want me dead anyway. They're just sick people, like Rick Henry and Karen Shelton. They're sick people. And again, they have people in other agencies they're affiliated with, including CIA. But I didn't remember anything, and the officers didn't take it. It's one of those scenarios where you're supposed to go to the hospital. Again, me being a law enforcement officer, I know what was supposed to happen. They're supposed to take me right to the hospital. And they would have detected something wrong. And they could actually do a blood test and all that. Urinalysis, all that. Find what was there. So what we want to do is in these, if somebody comes, we should run a program asking for assistance. Right. From the immigrant community. And if, the fact is, it's just the way. If you're worried about being deported, if you can bring in something, even just 5 guys selling pills, you could. I mean, that's probably the low bar there. You might 4 guys, even probably even 2 guys. Right? You bring in some drug organization where they're moving some product, right? Or even I mean, any migrant can probably bring in 2 or 3. There's a chance that you could not be deported and given some sort of permanent status. But again, my point is, officers need to be apprised that to be sensitive to receiving assistance. And when we receive the assistance, make sure we protect them. Because if we don't protect them, then people might not come in. You may actually that day need to pull somebody out. And then again, you might not. Again, if they had taken me to the hospital, it's been a whole different world. I don't know if I could remember that part or anything pertinent that would trigger a concern. But maybe the doctor could have figured it out. Because I couldn't remember. So I couldn't say, hey, somebody said to me this after I was drinking my tea. I couldn't remember that part. Took me probably a year or so to remember that guy. Well, I was out of it. I was totally out of it. Oh, I remember the car sliding sideways on some dirt, and I couldn't control it too well. And I remember angels speaking to me. And they spoke through my mouth. I'm like an oracle because I can't hear in my head too well. Right. And, people hear things like psychics can hear in their head. And the angel said, we know what you're worried about. Nobody will be harmed. So I worried. I'm freaking out. I'm like, people are going to be hurt. People are going to be hurt. And I'm a big protector. I even became a bigger protector at that point. And the angel said, don't worry. It's not going to go down that way. You'll be fine. They'll be fine. Everybody will be fine. No, when I would travel, again, when I go to New York, there's angels that move with me. So when I go up to New York to heal in New York, I'm the physical presence that brings the angels and heals the city. But the angels are part of that process. So I would travel with armies of angels. So again, there weren't additional terrorist activity because of my work. All right, give me a second here. I got to do something. Be back in a second. But again, by the time the officers interviewed me, I wouldn't have remembered that. There's like a blank spot. I was just trying to think about what the officer was saying. It made no sense. Well, if you look in the records, it says something else because we never got to that point of figuring out that I was drugged. Well, what they do is they're trying to discredit their victim. So they want the victim to be seen as psychologically unstable or having a psychological issue. Psychological episode is where it went to. But years later, I realized I was drugged. Maybe even within a year. I can't tell you the exact time frame because parts of it started coming back, pieces come back, and I started figuring it out. The first thing is I thought it was in my tea, so you probably would see me not go to Starbucks as much at a certain point because I used to love going to Starbucks. I love the people at Starbucks. I was a great customer for them. Tip them, say nice things to them. So you'll first see that. Then you'll see me go back to Starbucks and those kind of places because I figured out that why would he tell me it was in my tea? Why would he want me to know that it was in my tea? And how would he do that? This was a random Starbucks. So it made me think it was a cover story for what they were actually doing. No, he existed. So if he existed, then I was drugged. Right. Some random guy is not going to say that stuff in a Starbucks. He directly walked up to me. Now, I do believe they do put people in. That's why I say be careful eating the cop joints. Again, not all drugs make you feel woozy or cause you to have those type of episodes. They can use things just to drop your inhibitions. And next thing you know, you're hanging from the chandelier in some party naked.